EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a special nighttime edition of Birds 365 following the Eagles' first practice at training camp today. John McMullen joining the show, was down there all day long at NovaCare, so he had a front up-close and personal look at everything you read about all day long, everything we talked about on the National Football Show, everything we talked about on our shows earlier today on the JAKIB Sports Network. We are joined now by the source, Johnny Mack, who was down at training camp. Johnny Mack, how you doing? First day of camp. Set the stage for me. What was it like down there at the NovaCare today?
Humid.
I believe
it's
it.
like a soupy day. Overcast. The sun, of course, comes out at night. Mekhi Becton's throwing up. It was steamy.
Steamy day in July. Late July, Johnny Mack. Late July football, man. It's a steamy one down there. I'm sure it was.
Yeah, and that's tough on the big guys, but he got right back out there, and he was practicing because Landon Dickerson has a lacerated toe. So he got bumped up to the first team again, similar to mandatory minicamp when Landon was out for an excused absence. But so that kind of jumbled things on the offensive line. Brett Toth was also out, backup center. So Matt Hennessy kind of kicked over to center with the second team. Those were the injuries. Guys who started on the PUP list, Cooper DeJean, which was, I reported at SI last night that he was going to start on the NFI list, non-football injury, hurt his hamstring, working out, trying to get ready for training camp. And anytime you have those 4-4 guys, the last thing you want to mess with is hammies, because those things can linger. So the Eagles are going to take it cautious with Cooper. And that's big, because as a rookie, he needs as much work as possible. A lot of people projected him to push Avonte Maddox for the starting slot job, and I was in that club, but 3 weeks without Cooper DeJean, if that's how long it takes, it's probably unlikely now that he'll be up to speed by week 1. So maybe it pushes back the time frame. Sidney Brown, no surprise, obviously, still coming back from the ACL. He starts on the PUP list. So those are the bookkeeping things. And the offense was pretty good, pretty sharp. And that's a positive thing coming off the spring when it was not good. So right away, you get some positivity.
Yeah, good stuff to hear. The offense, by all accounts, from what I hear from you, from what I read today on Twitter, from everybody who was down there, many friends of Birds 365 who were down there, offense looked good. So some positive things there. You heard Johnny Mack's quick takeaways. John, before we get into what transpired today with the press conferences, the on-field work, Mekhi Becton throwing up, all sorts of that stuff, I want to ask you about Cooper DeJean. Obviously, the news broke last night. He's going to be out for about 3 weeks, they said, with a hamstring injury. What can you tell us about the injury? When I hear hamstring, Johnny Mack, I get nervous. I was a goalie in hockey growing up. That was like the dreaded injury that never left. You had it forever. It lingered. It's the dreaded injury. You don't like hearing about it. What do you know about Cooper DeJean's hamstring injury?
Well, and that's why the Eagles are playing it cautious, especially when you talk about a thoroughbred player, so to speak. And Cooper's a fast guy, runs a 4.4, explosive guy, 38.5-inch vertical leap. Those are the guys you're really worried about. You don't worry about it as much with the bigger guys. But yeah, you're at the risk of aggravating that thing again and again and again if you come back too quickly. So the Eagles want to make sure he's 100% before they get him back on the field. And they're probably going to be, as I said, a little bit extra cautious with it because of the type of player he is. And, he's going to be set back. And Nick Sirianni admitted that today. As a rookie, you do need maybe the reps a little bit more than a veteran player, and especially a rookie who you're projecting to have a role early in the season. So it's a hit, but when I reported it last night, I mean, I had some people losing their minds. Like, I mean, it's not that serious. He's going to be out 3 weeks. That's what the Eagles' cautious approach is. So it's not terribly serious, but it probably backs you up 3-4 games in the regular season
Yeah, I
before
think real
you can
quick
get up
before I
to
ask you
speed.
further about that. Do you know how it happened? Did they say how it happened? I mean, you hear NFI, which is a non-football injury, and you just start to wonder, like, what happened? Was it off season? Was it something he could have
Oh, he's working
prevented?
out. A non-football injury does not mean non-foot. It means you
Right.
didn't get hurt under the auspices of your team.
Okay.
So it
Got it.
doesn't mean you got hurt doing something you weren't supposed to be doing or doing something not related to football. He was working out to get ready for training camp and he
Got
hurt
it.
his hamstring. But it's not at the NovaCare complex. He's doing it on his own with his team. And that's what non-football injury means. You can get a non-football injury in a non-football injury, but I think because of the name of the list, all that, the only difference between NFI and PUP, Cindy Brown got hurt playing. If he got hurt in practice with the Eagles, he would have been put on the PUP list. If Cooper did this at the NovaCare complex, he'd be on the PUP list. But he did it away from the Eagles, so it's just a categorization thing. So he goes on the NFI list. That's all it means.
Got it. So that's good. That's good news. I wasn't sure, to be honest with you, whether it was something that was, I don't know what you could be doing in the offseason where you would injure a hamstring, but good to know that. Hopefully, John, my one worry with that is, and I know you say it might back you up 3-4 games, is he's a rookie, so he hasn't been through this. He's never been through an NFL training camp. This is a new defensive coordinator where you got to think the first 21 days of the training camp are the most important days, especially when you're installing defensive things and you're figuring out who you want to start and all of those different things. I mean, when you're a rookie, am I overstating this? I think it's going to set him. I think he's going to be kind of playing catch up. Maybe
no, that's what I
long.
said. Nick admitted it's going to, but one thing I want to address first is, what are you doing in the, because I got a bunch of people that on social media, it's like, what do you think these guys are coming off the couch? Especially guys like Cooper DeJean. You see all these videos of Jalen Hurts working out with Saquon Barkley or A.J. Brown or some of the receivers and guys work. You can't go away from an NFL facility in the modern era and, go on a bunch of vacation, especially as a defensive back. There's certain positions. These guys are working out constantly. I mean, A.J. Brown is constantly working out year round. Not, so number one, because I got a bunch of people who said, what he's not even here yet. How's he get hurt? It's like, what do you mean, how's he get hurt? I just said he runs a 4.42. The guy's working out all the time. And again, if it were one of those instances when he was, whether it's a tight end university or an offensive lineman working out with Lane Johnson at O-line masterminds, guys get hurt all the time working out. So I think people are really misconstrued about this Cooper DeJean injury. But yeah, as I said, Nick admitted, it's a setback from the standpoint of getting him ready for week 1 as a potential starter. Long term, and Howie then jumped in because Howie spoke to us today as well and jumped in and said, we're expecting to have this guy for a long time.
Yeah.
So if it's backed up 3-4 games, who cares in the long run, essentially?
Yeah, my fear is that he just plays. He's got to play a lot of catch up, and it's already a big load as a rookie coming in and expected to get some snaps. Where obviously there's a major acclimation period. It's widely talked about across the league, and then you add in a 3-week injury at the very start of camp. Definitely something that Cooper is going to have to battle. So hopefully he gets back healthy. And everything works out good. John, I want to start on the press conferences today when we get into the events of today. Before I get into somebody specifically, what stood out to you? You spoke with Nick. You spoke with Howie. I thought that was interesting. They added Howie Roseman in at the last second. You spoke with Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Darius Slay. A couple other players spoke. What were your biggest takeaways from the comments that were made from the players? There's a lot of them being talked about.
Well, one from the standpoint of Howie, I asked Howie about the coordinators because that report came out about that he hired them. So he, went through the process, kind of scuttled that thought and explained, the collaborative process. But he's in charge of the personnel, essentially. Nick's in charge of the coaching staff, but they collaborate, which is understandable, I would say. And then Jalen Hurts and the Nick Sirianni relationship, and Jalen addressed that right away, kind of cut off question. I think it was Elliot who got the question off right away. And Nick spoke about it too as well, and we knew that was coming because hey, Jalen left it open-ended back in the spring for 6 weeks. So
yeah,
I you and I have talked about it a lot. I think it's overblown to a certain extent. I mean, but I think Jalen was a little bit upset. He admitted basically there was a disconnect last season. I think maybe a little bit of it was the fact that, he's very close to Brian Johnson, and, it takes some time to get over these things. And I thought Howie was very honest and said how difficult it is in the NFL because to have continuity, because he explained, look, if you win, you lose coaches. If you lose, you lose coaches.
yeah.
And to a certain degree, it's difficult to retain that continuity. You can do it at head coach, obviously, if you want to. But it's very difficult to do it with the coordinators for a really long standard part of time. It happens, Jim Johnson here, really had no ambition at that point of his career to be a head coach, and was happy being a coordinator. Maybe have that same frame with Big Fangio. We'll see how it works out. But, if you remove the head coach, that might not work out. So it's a lot of things that go into it, and how he kind of explained that part of it, which is true.
Yeah, it was good stuff. What about the comments from Jalen Hurts, John? My first perspective, or my first takeaways when I listened to Jalen Hurts today was sounded like more refreshed. He sounded confident. Now I know he doesn't change much, but I went back and I listened to some of his press conferences at OTAs, and he just sounded more upbeat. Not upbeat, I don't know if that's the right word, but he just sounded like he was confident, cool, collected. Knew what that was at stake coming into the year. I thought Jalen Hurts sounded great today. I really did, and I'm not just saying that. I thought he was great, and I thought he should. That was the first time I think he's really taken a show of, he really backed the organization. I believe in Lurie. I believe in Howie. I believe in Nick, and I thought it was good stuff from Jalen Hurts. What were your takeaways from his press conference today?
Yeah, I mean, clearly it was a sort of market correction type of press conference. And, I'm sure everybody talked to him about why not taking the layup, so to speak, back in the spring was not a good thing. And it was pretty easy. And I think it'll be pretty easy moving forward. And he always talks about learning from mistakes. Maybe you just learn from that mistake. And but everybody's fired up day one. That's no surprise. A lot of optimism. And yeah, there should be. It's a talented team. But a lot of work to do if you want to reach. Last year's was a talented group, and a lot of things can go wrong in this league. But yeah, if you're not hyped up for day one, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough season.
Yeah, no, I knew. I just mean the whole aura of them. I get it. You're right. I mean, it is day one where you're going to be that jacked up. But coming off that 7-week stretch where everybody made everything of what he had to say last time, I thought it was a good showing from QB1. I liked how he backed his team. I liked how, I thought he was a spokesman person for the Eagles a little bit there, more so than I've seen him in the past, which I think is maybe, a nod to him taking on a more serious role as the leader of the team and as the main guy and all those things. Now, maybe I'm making too much of it, but that was just my takeaway from it, and I thought it was a positive thing, without a doubt.
Yeah, well, you don't win with press conferences. I never get excited by press conferences.
Me neither. I said that on the show this morning, but I will say everybody was waiting to hear them, but based on the last one.
It's more of an issue when it's like in the spring. It's more of an issue than, in other words, you're doing your job today. So, well done, tip the cap. But yeah, press conferences aren't going to win or lose, but it was easy, and that was the whole problem with the original aspect of it. It was easy, and that's why there was a problem, because it was a layup, and he didn't make the layup.
Right.
And I'm sure Jeffrey talked to him. I'm sure Howie talked to him. I'm sure Nick talked to him, and he made the correction, and that's fine. That's a good thing.
Good stuff from Jalen Hurts. John, anything else in the press conferences before we move on to what they did on the field today that you feel the need to talk about? Anything else that stood out to you from anybody that spoke today in their press conferences that's worth talking about here on Birds 365?
Poor Saquon had to deal with all the hard knock stuff.
Yeah,
so he's probably glad to get that page turned finally. And he showed some signs today. So that was and the fans who were there, there's a small amount of fans let in each day. They were very excited when Saquon Barkley touched the football. So you can see how fired up the fan base is to get him. And he showed some things today. And, the offense wasn't great in the spring. We talked about it a lot. It was a lot better today. And maybe that's just the reason, but he showed some of the juice that you expect, and even showed some of that impact that Howie Roseman was talking about. The Eagles, baked an option to him. Everybody went to Barkley on the defense, and Jalen Hurts was left by himself for a big run. So that's something that's not going to show up on the stat sheet if it's in a game, but that's where I've talked about it on the show. Can he have an impact? Can he help the offense? It's just one play in July, but you can see if other teams, if other defenses are concerned about Saquon Barkley, then maybe it opens up some other things, or in this case, the quarterback or other players. But yeah, a lot of positive signs for really the first time with Saquon Barkley. So, and the fans maybe that was part of it as well. Maybe he was hyped up because the fans were there.
Yeah, good stuff. Let's go to the on-field stuff, Johnny Mac. We'll start with the offense before we get into some of the specific players and some of the things we saw. What did you see from the offense today? You just kind of mentioned that it looked good with Saquon Barkley, but, we only get to see a little bit of the footage, John, as you know. You watched the whole practice. What did you see in the practice? What stood out to you? Any good plays, any good players, anything you can clue us in on? Take us inside the practice today, Johnny Mac.
I do think, this was more of an offensive day than a defensive day. The biggest play was a Jalen Hurts 35-yard touchdown pass to Dallas Goedert. It's interesting. I remember talking about the spring. Dallas Goedert's looked great, and he looked great in the spring, and he was always open. And I remember talking on the show, I'm like, all right, if you hit one or two of these throws, there's a whole different narrative. And today he hit the throw. And, Kaylee Ringo was trailing in coverage. CJ was getting over late. And he had that window and Dallas is open and boom, you have a touchdown. Now all of a sudden it's all positive. Where if he made, there's at least 3 times I could remember where Dallas was open for big plays down the field and he just missed them. So that's the razor thin margin of error you have in the NFL. You hit those throws, you look like $1 million. You don't, you look bad, and people keep talking about it. Today it was much, much sharper. I mentioned Saquon getting involved a little bit more for the first time, really. So that's a positive. And Paris Campbell was tremendous. He was eating the young cornerback's lunch with these comeback routes. So that's a positive.
Yeah, apparently Hurts was going to him a lot, right?
Yeah, and he had these violent comeback routes where he would just stop on a dime and lose the corners and come back to the football. So, it's one day. Hopefully he can do that consistently. If he does that consistently, I mean, the wide receiver 3 competition we keep talking about is not going to be a competition.
It's got to be Paris Campbell. I thought it was interesting too. With the comments from Howie and Nick this morning when asked about that position. I thought their answers were interesting. Like, hey, we like the guys we brought in, but we're going to be watching. Yeah. And I thought that was a good thing. Like, hey, we know that we could potentially upgrade, and we're going to do it if we feel the need to. But Paris Campbell puts up good performance. Great to hear.
Yeah, if he keeps playing like that, they're not going to have to worry about it. But, he's got 5 years and consistency hasn't been the hallmark. So, we're right back out there tomorrow. So we'll see if he can back it up and be that from day to day to day. But yeah, Howie was very honest about wide receiver and basically said, we're going to be looking at that, what I just said, on a daily basis. And if it's not looking like we want it to look, they're probably going to go outside the organization.
Yeah, maybe they won't need to with Paris Campbell stepping up. Johnny Mack, I want to ask you specifically about the quarterback, Jalen Hurts, on the field today. I know we can't make much of the training camp stats and all that BS. I don't want to go down that road, but, Hurts, by all accounts, wasn't as sharp in the OTAs. Some fans were concerned about it. I don't think there's a reason to be concerned about spring football and summer football, but how did Jalen Hurts look out there today? From what I read, from what I was able to consume, it seemed like Hurts was much more sharp, concise, getting the ball out on time and on target. What did you see from QB1 today down at NovaCare?
Yeah, as a whole, much sharper than he was in the spring. And maybe that's just getting more comfortable with the offense. 6 weeks away, he mentioned he's been studying it, getting more familiar. So that's part of it. But yeah, he was just much. I talked about it. Dallas Goedert throws alone. I mean, missed him 3 times. Typical throws he's going to make. Today he made it. And it looks better, and people are talking about it. I did notice there wasn't as much underneath stuff as well over the middle. So maybe Kellen Moore's getting away from that. The stuff that Jalen's not as comfortable with. So you see this evolution. And again, it's one day. Maybe we come back tomorrow and he throws that at him again. You don't know, but overall, it was a positive day for the offense. If you're gonna do that goopy game, which we do, the offense won the day over the defense, and the defense was winning pretty consistently in the spring. Pretty consistently.
So a good sign there as the offense gets a win. John, we're 26 minutes in. I want to just do kind of an overall recap. So we'll get into the defense, but just real quick, did you see anything from the rookie wide receivers, Anais Smith and Johnny Wilson today? Anything from them in first team or any good reps for either of those guys?
No, they're mainly deep, second, third team guys.
Yeah. Well, I just, a lot of people have talked about Anais as a slot player. I didn't know if maybe the Eagles thought
they did a little sort of gimmick play to Anaya Smith that looked like it may have worked. It's tough to say, you're blowing things dead when tacklers get near him. But yeah, you could see them trying to, he's going to be here. So it's one of those things where can you take advantage of him in a situational way? But I imagine as things get deeper, that's, what the Eagles do. They generally start out rookies very slowly. And if they start playing well and doing well in their reps, they'll give them more second team looks and things like that. So I imagine you'll see Johnny and Anais get some opportunities as we get later in the camp, because they're also going to be very cautious when any, if Devontae tweaks something or AJ tweaks something, they're going to hold those guys out. So there'll be opportunities, but there wasn't many today, certainly. And they're not going to get much work with Jalen Hurts. The Eagles don't do it that way. That's going to be AJ and Devontae and Paris Campbell. So, but yeah, they'll get more work as things go deeper into camp.
One more question on offense here on the overall preview before we dive a little bit deeper later on in the show in hour number 2. Special edition. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Good crowd, Johnny Mac, for our nighttime edition of Birds 365.
First one ever.
Yeah, first one ever on a nighttime edition. So we thank you all for being here. Make sure you guys hit the like, as it's the best thing you can do to help us grow. We appreciate your guys' support all off season long, and now we officially reached training camp. So good stuff. Johnny Mac, a lot was made of, at least on Twitter and from the people who were down there. A lot of motion on offense, a lot of pre-snap motion. Everybody's excited about it. What did you see from the pre-snap motion? Was that a positive thing, or are we making a little bit too much of it?
Well, yeah. I mean, people make too much of it, but it's part of what Kellen does, and Kellen likes it.
We were bottom 5 in the league last year, John. We've talked about it a lot, so I think it's a good thing,
Well, it's going to be a part of the offense. You don't have to worry about that. It's a foundational philosophy of Kellen Moore, but they won 29 out of 32 with no motion. So that's all I'll say about that. Well, I mean, look, it's about execution. And to his credit, Kellen said that himself. He talked about, what's the most important thing. And I think everybody who asked him that question wants to hear something like that, like motion and he said clean operation, because he's a good coach and he understands. But, coaches and I asked him the question in the spring, about his use of motion. And he said, look, my dad did it when he was young, and his college coach did it, and he likes it. So that's how kind of everybody morphs into what they are, and he likes it. So it's going to be a part of the offense. Is it going to be automatically successful? Well, think about all the teams that ran more motion than the Eagles that weren't as successful as the Eagles. Motion does not guarantee success. So I think this assumption that, the Eagles are going to be great because they're running more motion, I mean, that to me is silly.
No, but I think it's a good sign when you have this much talent on the offense, and you have a coordinator who comes in, and at least you see something different. You see that maybe he's going to be able to incorporate some of this talent well and do it properly. And I think that's a good sign, at least from it. I get what you're saying.
If you do it properly, and you do it and you execute it correctly. But if you're motioning for motioning's sake, it's not going to help you. No, it's not going to help you at all.
I don't know about that. I mean, it didn't look good last year down the stretch. No motion, no difference in the offense. A lot of, look, you can say it wasn't predictable last year. The whole league said it was predictable. Everybody said it was predictable. It didn't work last year down the stretch late in the season.
Nick Bosa is not the whole league.
Christian McCaffrey called out the play on the live telecast.
Christian McCaffrey can call out everybody's play on every team in the NFL.
All right, I'm just saying the
Luke
results didn't work down the stretch.
by the way, a former teammate of Christian McCaffrey, Luke Kuechly could call out every play, every single play on as one of the best middle linebackers in football. Should be a Hall of Famer. Yeah, guys know plays. Guys, smart linebackers know what's being run. Execution. I know it's boring to people. Everybody knew what was coming with the Emmitt Smith Cowboys. Everybody knew. Everybody knew. Couldn't stop it.
No, I get it. I definitely see what you're saying. No doubt about it. But I just think that motion is a good thing to have in your offense. I think it gives you the chance to create mismatches. It creates confusion on the defense. It gives them more to think about. But I mean, I get what you're saying. It doesn't matter if you don't execute. But I think overall, it's a good thing to have in the offense.
The best stretch of Eagles football in history, they didn't use motion.
Were they bottom 5 in that stretch?
Bottom 5. The best stretch in Philadelphia Eagles history. And they've been around for 91 years.
Well, on the same breath, though, the worst collapse in Eagles history also saw no motion.
So which is correct?
Well, the league may be adjusted like they do consistently in this league, where you have to adjust and get better and make changes.
Why do you have to adjust and no motion?
No, I'm saying that when they were 29 of 32 with no motion, but they also then struggled with no motion. So was it an overcorrection by the Eagles, or did the league figure out how to create a game plan to stop the Eagles offense? And now they're changing it up to answer the correction.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's more of it's a better thing when you have a bad football team and you're trying to scheme people open, which generally works in short bursts before teams adjust and shut it down.
If you Kyle Shanahan would disagree with that,
and you don't have the talent for it. Well, Sean McVay is the guy, and I say this all the time when it comes to motion in the NFL, and he literally calls it the illusion of complexity. Literally calls it that. I don't call it that. He calls it that. What all he's trying to do is test the discipline of the defense. And a lot of times with young defenders, it'll work because they don't have discipline. With veteran guys who know what they're doing, it doesn't bother them. But I mean, people want to make it this cure-all. I'm just saying it ain't a cure-all. They're not going to win.
I get what you're saying. You're not saying, okay, they ran motion, now they're going to be the greatest offense in the NFL. I get it. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
They're not going to win football games because they run motion. And Kellen Moore would be the first to tell you that.
No,
and
but
that's why I said clean operation. Don't get behind the sticks. Do all the things that are boring. And then, he's comfortable with it. It's like, Nick got into the no motion thing. I tell the story all the time because Phillip Rivers didn't like it. And Phillip Rivers preferred just to get his information by formational tricks. And, maybe that's not fair to expect Jalen Hurts to be Phillip Rivers. But he had more success doing it than Phillip Rivers ever did. So you can look at it both ways, at least from a team perspective. I just think it's become this shiny bauble that people hang on to and think it's some kind of correction, where the correction is teaching the quarterback how to handle a blitz. That's what's going to win you football games. That's what's going to win you football games.
Fair perspective. I think you're leaving out potentially some of the advantages of having that when you have an 8th ranked offense in the NFL and it lacked all that motion. You're giving yourself a chance to be better. Kenneth P in the chat, he's right. He points out Eagles had veterans at cornerback get cooked by motion, and that was in the Super Bowl. And that he's correct. Darius Slay was so far out of position, he wasn't even in a 10-yard radius of a receiver in the Super Bowl because of motion. So I'm just saying that I think overall it's a good thing to add to an offense.
Yeah, that's Andy Reid won 2 Super Bowls on his corn dog play.
Yeah,
as
he did.
calls it.
That goes to the point.
But but again, and when I joke about that, because I joke about it for Andy, people are talking about one play in it's a big situation. But if you run corn dog, again, what Andy calls it, if you run that 20 times a game, it's not going to be successful. And when you talk,
my only point is having it in your toolkit is a good thing. That's all.
And yeah, but that's what I mean. People look at it as the Chiefs did it and won the Super Bowl. Well, yeah. And Darius Slay's a veteran quarterback and he blew a coverage. There's so many things that factor into that. Number one is, well, if you're playing man, it's not going to be as big as an issue because you're not going to screw up. So you have this Vic Fangio in that, at that time, tinted defense. They were copying Vic. And I talk about it all the time, how complicated it is and how important communication is. So when you talk about Slay, there's like 3-4 guys screwing up and not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Which factors in, which factors into it as well. But all I'm trying to say is they had tremendous success being bottom 5 in motion.
Yeah,
more success than they've ever had in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. And the assumption is that they're going to fix this shit because they're throwing some motion in there, which Jim Schwartz calls eyewash and eye freaking candy, because that's all it is. You're trying to fool people. You're not trying to beat people.
Well, maybe that'll help the offense, John. Maybe we need to fool more people because nobody was fooled down the stretch last year. Wait, all I'm saying, you agree. Motion is not a bad thing, right?
It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's a thing.
Okay, that's fair.
It's a thing to test the discipline of the defense. And if you have an undisciplined defense, keep running it. If these morons can't, keep up, keep running it. If they can, it's a waste of time. Now, also the quarterback part of it. In a static world, let's call the Eagles offense a static world last year. Jalen Hurts struggled to handle the blitz. In a non-static world, is he going to be better against the blitz? Potentially. But it's going to have nothing to do with the motion. It's going to have to do with Kellen Moore and Doug Nussmeier and Nick Sirianni and anybody else who's involved, getting him properly prepared in between game days to do what he needs to do. That will improve the Eagles' offense. Because the blitz is coming because they saw what it did to him last year. And they will not let up until you prove you can deal with it.
Well, I understand what you're saying. That's the bottom line. I get what you're saying. I do think, back to the motion point, though, I think it could help when you have a team that wants to bring the blitz. Okay, now they have more stuff to think about. Whether it's eye candy or not, at least it's there. And I know the execution matters.
I encourage
it plays a part in being better.
That's probably on YouTube. Everybody search Luke Kuechly for old NFL Tims of him just calling out plays left and right. Knows every stinking play before they run it. And he's a Hall of Fame level player, but even when he knew every stinking play, he didn't stop every stinking play. Because if you execute it from an offensive perspective, as everyone would say that played the early 90 Cowboys, and Jimmy Johnson admits they had 3 running plays. And by the way, the Eagles, inside zone, outside zone. Go stop it.
Moving on, John, let's go to the defense. What'd you see from the defense today? A lot was made of, the different rotation. Seemed like there was a lot of rotation between guys on the first team. I thought it was interesting that Isaiah Rodgers had the first crack at cornerback opposite Darius Slay. I thought that was interesting. What did you make of the defense today in your first look at the training camp of 2024?
Yeah, they're going to do a lot of rotating, it seems, at corner and linebacker, and try to figure out what their best solutions are. Vic seemed to be throwing out a base defense against the run, which was Slay, Rodgers, Maddox, Devin White, Zach Bond, which was interesting to me because two of those players are not regarded as good run defenders. And then he seemed to be throwing out a more pass-centric defense where it was Slay, Maddox, Kelly Ringo, and Devin White and Nakobe Dean together. So it was interesting, but he said in the past he likes to throw a lot at the team and see what they can pick up and see what they can handle, and then he'll scale back when it's time to scale back. So I think he's doing all that and he's throwing it. Quinyon Mitchell, man, they played him at left corner. He got most of his work as Slay's backup at left corner. He was in the slot. He was at right corner towards the end of practice. They moved him over there. He's been at dime linebacker in the spring. They are throwing a lot at Quinyon Mitchell.
How's he handling it, John, from your perspective?
Seems to be handling it all pretty well. It doesn't seem like a fish out of water. The defense didn't make many plays today. The most noticeable would have been Zach Bond had a nice pass breakup on a seam route to CJ Uzama, and that was a Kenny Pickett throw. Not a lot of plays from the defense today. But Quinyon does not look out of place. He does not look overwhelmed at all. And they're throwing a lot at him.
That's a very good sign, though. Very good sign that it doesn't seem like a fish out of water when they're considering they're moving them to left side, right side,
played
slot,
all
linebacker.
corner.
I mean,
he didn't play linebacker today, but he
said in the spring, right? In the spring, he was at linebacker. Yeah.
He played all three corner positions today. Which is pretty impressive. And maybe part of that is because Cooper's out. But even so, yeah, I'm still on my Quinyon Mitchell's going to be a day one starter. We'll see how it shakes out. It's one day. But yeah, Ringo, who I'm also high on, did not play as well today. So I'd say of the three, Mitchell was the best. Rodgers was number 2, and then Kaylee Ringo number 3.
Dang, disappointing. I have Keely as the starter, so I hope just a little biased.
It's one day. It's one day.
I'm just having fun with it. I like Keely Ringo, so hopefully he has a good rest of the training camp coming in here. John, let's go to the defensive line. I'm gonna get to a commercial break. Just finish up our overall wrap, and then we'll dive into some deeper topics. I want to ask you about, the Cooper DeJean effect on the back end, what that might mean for the roster and who they keep around or don't keep around. So we'll ask you about that later on in the show in hour number 2 here. We'll be live till 8 p.m. tonight. So thanks everybody for being here. John, let's go to that defensive line. What did you see on the defensive line? I read, one thing, I forget who it was. Shoot, I'd like to give him credit. Let me see if I can really quickly just pull it up. It was one of your beat reporters who was down there at the practice who was watching. Let me see if I can really quickly just grab that. EJ Smith was down there. And was it EJ Smith? Maybe it was Johnny Clark. Sorry, I had EJ too, but it was Johnny Clark. But he says, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter lining up with Milton Williams, Josh Sweat and Bryce Huff on the outside, Nolan Smith and Brandon Graham rotating in on the outside. Johnny Mac, that sounds like a pretty good defensive front to me. Break down what you saw from the defensive line. And then also
people starting to figure out that 50 front. Yeah. John Clark.
Yeah, they
are trying to figure it out. Yeah.
I think your masterclass, Johnny Mac, helped a lot more people than you're thinking. That thing got a lot of views. I think people are watching that, learning about this defense.
Yeah, that's their base front run essentially front. 1st and 10, typically they're going to be in that 50 front, which is, tight or tough. And Jordan Davis is the nose tackle. You got 2 4-eye techniques, and that's Jalen Carter and Milton Williams. And then the 2 edge players, which are going to be Bryce Hupp and Josh Sweat the majority of the time. So that's kind of those 50 fronts. But bottom line is they're going to be in 40 fronts, 4-man fronts, more than 50. So that's probably more important how they handle that. And that's still to be seen. How are you going to line up on 3rd and 5 versus 3rd and 13? If it's 3rd and 13, you just get your best pass rushers on the field. If it's 3rd and 5, that's probably where you need a little bit more from Jordan Davis to being able to stay on the field and create not necessarily a great pass rush, but certainly where you want to see a push from in the pocket, make the quarterback uncomfortable and maybe make things a little bit easier. Jalen Carter's going to be out there. Bryce Hupp's going to be out there. And, Josh Sweat's going to be out there. So it's really the 4th guy. Could be Milton, could be Jordan. Could even use a NASCAR package and get an extra edge rusher, play them inside. You can play Brandon Graham inside. So that, to me, is going to be the more interesting part of it.
Yeah, we'll see how that shakes out. Pretty good, though, from the 50 front standpoint, as you mentioned. People are starting to pick up on that, Johnny Mac, thanks to you educating all the people on YouTube and all the people who listen to Birds 365, and there are quite a bit of them. Johnny Mac, we'll get to our first break. A couple more deep questions I want to ask you. We'll get into what else went down at day 1 of training camp. By all accounts, it seems like it was a pretty good day in Eagle Land. They answered the questions of the offseason that were lingering. I thought they put that to bed pretty quickly. Good job by them on managing that situation. And on field, seems like things went pretty well to start too. So we'll take our first commercial break. I want to thank everybody for being here. James Carver, Twiz the Jiggis, Scott, Jeff Martin, Gerald, Richard Nutinsky, William, Crowley, Scott, all sorts of good people in here tonight. Chuck Hutton, thank you, Eduardo Reza. Anybody I missed, I didn't mean to miss you, but if I did, I apologize. Stay tuned, everybody. Birds 365 will be right back on a special nighttime edition of the show.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Up. And go Birds.
the greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles. EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a nighttime edition of Birds 365. It's our first ever nighttime show on Birds 365. Doing it because Johnny Mac is working hard, man, down at NovaCare all day long today. Down there very early on. You saw the whole practice live, so we wanted to make sure we could give you guys 2 hours of content every day during training camp, and this is our way to do it. So a reminder, we will be live again tomorrow night after practice, as Johnny Mac has a similar schedule in the morning. So I'll be live in the morning like I was this morning. Maybe I'll get John by phone for a couple minutes if he's able to do it. If not, it'll just be me with you guys again, and then we'll be live again tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern time to 8 p.m. coming out of the National Football Show. So thank you guys all for being here, for adjusting your guys' schedules and continuing to support the show. We appreciate that very much. John, before we move into some of the deeper questions, I do want to ask, do you think the Cooper DeJean injury it changes the James Bradberry situation with his versatility? And now you lose a guy that's very versatile. You know, Cooper was talked about. He can play safety. He can play slot. He can play outside. You know, I'm not saying he was going to do all those things, but he was at least the guy that could. Does that change the projection for what James Bradberry might be for this team? Or if not Bradberry, does it change what they might do with any of the other guys?
I don't think so. You know, it's July 24th. If everything goes to plan, he'll be back August 14th, you know, somewhere mid-August range. And he's going to be a part of this team. So, no, I don't think it changes anything. Unless something develops and it becomes a more serious type of issue. But the Eagles were very confident that it would be a short-term injury. So I don't think it changes anything in the long term. And that's what Howie was saying. This is a player that's going to be here, hopefully from their perspective, for 10 years or so. So you never know if guys are going to develop, but that's the plan. So they're not worried about 3 weeks in the summer.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying it's going to affect his 10-year career, but will it affect his 2024 season? That's my question.
Well, it'll push it back. You know, if you thought he had a chance to be a starter, and a lot of people did
on day one, that's probably not happening.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean he's not going to be a starter by week 4 or week 5, and it didn't mean he was going to be a starter all of a sudden. You know, Avonte Maddox is still a very good player. And if Avonte stays healthy and can figure that out, there's no guarantee he would have been on the field to begin with. It seems there's like a weird kind of thing there where, like, a lot of people have no problem, I've heard, like Quinyon sit, and yet Cooper's got to be out there in week 1. You know, I kind of don't get that logic, but even without it, yeah, I mean, no, it's not going to affect any. And James Bradberry's not, you know, they're trying to trade James Bradberry.
Which I don't think anybody's trading for him when they know they can just wait it out and the Eagles are going to have
Well, there's a lot of dumb teams. I mean, that's
Sure.
what Howie makes his money on. I mean,
the
assumption, and I fall into this trap as well, is that everybody knows he's going to have to cut him. Well, yeah, but everybody's, you know, it happens all the time where, you know, look at what's going on with Hassan Reddick and the Jets. I mean, the Jets are now handing out all this information about they tried to extend him before the trade. He didn't agree to it, and they traded for him anyway. And now they're dealing with this. Well, that's pretty dumb. So just because it looks obvious, and that's the way That's why Howie's taken it as long as he's taken it. Now, my one concern with that, and I said it at some point on the show, look, every time Bradberry was out there, he practiced a lot today. Wasn't like minicamp when he showed up and he got the oblique injury.
Right.
And we never got to see him.
Yeah.
He was on every, unless I missed it, he was on every second team rep at safety. And that means Mekhi Gardner wasn't. And that means Avonte Maddox wasn't. They were on the third team.
Does that change your thinking at all and how the Eagles might be looking at him? I mean, if you're trying to just move him, do you want to put him out there and take away reps from your other younger guys, and two, risk potentially an injury to Bradberry? I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, if your scale was that 95% Bradberry's gone, does it tip the scale at all in the other way?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be doing it, but mainly, but
I just wonder if maybe the Eagles are viewing it a little bit differently, and maybe they're open to bringing Bradberry.
Well, presumably, I think it's more to do with they want to showcase,
right?
That he has the ability to move to safety as well, because he's never the fastest guy to begin with, and if he lost a step from that, which it seems he might have last year, then you might have to convince people that he can play safety. But I've said it, all this for a conditional 6th-round pick, maybe. And all right, maybe Avonte's a veteran player, so not as much as him, but even Avonte, well, he's a corner who can play safety. So extra reps wouldn't hurt him there. But more so Mekhi Gardner, who's a young player. And maybe they don't believe in him. They're never going to tell you the truth. Maybe they do believe in him. I don't know. But any young player, and he's making the change. He's a cornerback making the shift to safety. And now he's getting reps taken away. Doesn't make sense to me.
That's why I'm like, maybe they want to keep Bradberry. I know it's not what we've been thinking, but like you say, John, you might not agree with everything the Eagles do, and I don't, but normally you can see the logic or why they made a decision. Even if you don't agree with it, you can see the line of thinking. With this one, the line of thinking is leading me to believe maybe they're perfectly fine having James Bradberry on this team this year. I don't know. I'm just opening my mind up to that possibility. Not saying it's going to happen or it's true, just my speculation. But like you always say, normally what they does makes sense, even if you don't agree with it. This, to me, for a 6th or 7th.
Oh, yeah, but there's occasionally. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. And not that I'm the be-all, end-all, but the fact of the matter is he's not a starter, so you're going to pay a guy a bunch of money to be a backup at a position he's not used to. And, oh, by the way, he's not going to help you on special teams at a position where typically your backups have to help you on special teams. That's what I talk about when I say typically the Eagles make sense. None of that makes sense. And this is about just trying to get something for the player and how he's going to kick that can as far as he can down the road. Man, that's not even, in theory, that's not even the 53-man roster cut. That's the trading deadline.
Yeah.
And if he does that, I think it's even worse. But again, the Eagles aren't on Hard Knocks, and you're not going to see these very honest and frank discussions about the evaluation of players. And maybe they don't evaluate certain players that highly, and they're not concerned about the developmental aspect of it. I don't know. But it doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, so we'll see what they end up doing with that. John, 2 super chats I want to get to. Leon, sorry, brother, I missed your super chat back at the start of the show. He says, John, don't forget to put sunscreen on your head. Hopefully, John, I got to get you like a JAKIB
there's a big I always have a hat on, so no need to worry about that.
All right, good. And then Jameson's checking in. Jameson, what's up, brother? Appreciate you being here. He says, J-Mac, how's quarterback 2 looking? Who has the edge?
Kenny Pickett edge. There is no
somebody looking for quarterback 2, Johnny Mac. How did Kenny look today?
There is no competition. Kenny was
No, I'm not saying there's a competition, but how did Kenny look? Did he look all right?
It wasn't a great day for really. Kenny or Tanner didn't stand out that much. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't great. There were no turnovers, which had more to do with the defense. Typically, what Kenny did best in the spring was back shoulder stuff. We didn't see any of that. His best throw was probably the Grant Calcaterra on the little bit of a crossing route, which was a nice throw. And then right after, the play after it, the exact play after it was the pass down the seam to CJ Uzama, and CJ was open and he sort of left it behind him, which enabled Zach Bond to get back in it and get a pass breakup. So that was probably more on Kenny Pickett than anybody. And that was my defensive play of the day, because the defense didn't make many plays and Zach made a play, but it was really because Kenny left it a little bit too short. It's kind of tough to tell from the sideline. It was either short or behind him. But yeah, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great for Kenny Pickett.
I want to thank everybody for being in. A lot of guys just checking in. So a couple people asking about wide receiver 3, straight edge. We did discuss it a little bit briefly in the open. I will circle back and have Johnny Mac re-hit on that. I know a couple people are checking in later and didn't catch the whole beginning of the show. So we will circle back and make sure we do a recap on everything. John, I want to ask you about the 2 edge rushers where my sights are set. And that's Bryce Huff and that's Nolan Smith. Those are the 2 guys I'm, most curious to see this year. How did they look today? And did you see anything from those guys? I know you said it wasn't a big defensive day. The pads weren't on yet or anything, but anything you learned from those guys today?
No, nobody was. Jalyx Hunt showed some things. Maybe that
there you
excite
go.
people. And maybe I always say, I think everybody looks at Jalyx Hunt just automatically as redshirting him, and that's probably what's going to happen. A virtual red shirt. But, I've said from the start, you got to keep your mind open to say maybe he's just shows up and he's a natural and he can get out there and he can play. I'm not saying that's going to happen either, but I would say of the edge rushers, he's the one who stood out the most.
It's interesting.
Which is, he's playing against obviously the second team and second, third team. And remember, Mekhi Becton was with the first team because Landon wasn't there. So everything gets construed. So he's not working against Mekhi Becton. He's working against Brett Johnson. So that factors into it. Bunch of things, but he looked pretty good. And I was got Jared Allen for people who don't, he's going to be a Hall of Famer at some point. We'll see when he gets in. But I remember his rookie season, he was I believe a 4th or a 5th round pick, somewhere in that range with the Kansas City Chiefs. So this is like early 2000s. 4th round pick.
Allen. He wore 69, didn't he? The number 69.
Yeah, he's a good ball. And he does that for a reason.
I know he does. That's why I remember. I mean, I was younger when he played, but I do remember the player.
Yeah, he's a piece of work. But unbelievable player.
Did you cover him, John, when you were in Minnesota?
Oh yeah,
nice.
They had something called the Cheese League back then for old football fans who remember. A bunch of teams, because of the weather and being cooler, when teams would go away for training camp, they train on the border of Minnesota, Wisconsin. So you had this sort of cheese league, and the Chiefs were one of those teams that would practice in Wisconsin. And I got to see Jared Allen because I was covering the Vikings at the time as a rookie in Kansas City. I had no idea who he was. He's coming from Idaho State, where he was a long snapper as well. By the way, he's the best long snapper you're ever going to see, but he's a 5-time All-Pro, and he could go in and throw a dart as a long snapper. But that I had no idea who he was, and he was a rookie, as I said, rookie day 3 pick, and he was just beating people like a drum on his first day, in one-on-ones against the Vikings, who were, a good team at the time. And I'm like, I figured out pretty quickly who he was. And like I said, eventually he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Some guys just have it. And, that's why I bring up maybe Jalyx Hunt just has it. I'm not saying that's going to happen. It's very unlikely he's going to turn into a Hall of Fame player. But I use Jared as an example. I'm sure everybody in Kansas City was saying that same type of mentality. Well, maybe he's got some potential. Maybe it'll take a year, and bang, he's got 9 sacks as a rookie, 11 in his second year, 15 and a half by his 4th year. Unbelievable natural pass rusher. Maybe, you never know.
Boy, would that be big if the project player Jalyx Hunt came on like Jared Allen. That would be amazing stuff. Good breakdown there, John. Exciting to hear that Jalyx Hunt had a good day. We'll see if he can keep it up. Let's go to James Carver. Big super chat from our man James. James, thank you, brother. Appreciate it as always. You're one of our biggest supporters on JAKIB Sports, and we can't thank you enough. Your support goes a long way. It goes more than I think you realize. So we appreciate you being here and your super chat, no doubt about it. $19.99. James Carver says, if JB is really done then it's really best to have him at second team. It either raises his trade or it doesn't. The Eagles already had paid for him, so it's like he's a big blind and poker. Play JB in camp and hope for hit on others' needs. What's your thoughts on that, Johnny Mac?
Well, I mean, yeah, the Eagles have done it in the past. I mean, the most high profile would be Sam Bradford. You wait and you wait and you wait, and somebody gets an injury, and all of a sudden you're trading him for a first-round pick. Now, that's not going to happen. That's a quarterback. But if there's already a bunch of teams that have a lot of cornerback issues in this league. And to be honest, I'm very surprised that James hasn't been moved already because he's not that expensive. But, his film last year was pretty bad. So I assume most people think maybe he's lost it from a physical standpoint. But from the Eagles' perspective, I just don't like, especially when you need one of the young guys to develop at safety. Why take away reps from those guys? Maybe you don't believe in Tristan McCullum. Maybe you don't believe in Mekhi Gardner. Again, I'm sure they have these frank discussions, and, I'm sure they're counting on Sidney Brown when he comes back to be the main guy, but you still would like that fourth safety, and maybe that's where Cooper comes in, and maybe that's where Avonte Maddox comes in. So they have a bunch of different avenues, and maybe the belief is that we're going to go in a different direction anyway, so we can hold them and we can wait for as long as possible. But I just, is the juice worth the squeeze? What do you think you're going to get?
Right.
It's conditional fifth.
I don't know.
Either. I don't know.
I'm with you on that, Johnny Mac. Good stuff there from James Carver. Thank you, brother, for dropping that super chat. One more from Philly 500 House of Mouse Club. Says, will Covey make the team? We have multiple returners. Good question there. Lot to think about.
Why does everybody want to run Britton Covey out of town? He's the best punt returner in football last year. Now he's going to be the punt returner.
I don't think it's run him out of town. I think it's more of a roster crunch where it's like if you have a guy who can play receiver and he can return good too, maybe that's the line. I'm with you though. I don't want to get rid of Britton Covey. I like him. I think he's a good player.
Yeah,
I'd like to see him though get a chance at receiver. Maybe
I would like to see him get a chance at receiver as well, because they up in the spring, he was creating more separation more consistently than any of the second or third team receivers. But I mean, he's tiny, and I get it.
He is. He's really small.
You look at him and say, well, is this guy really going to be able to help us at receiver? And maybe not. And look, you would always like the special teams, the core guys, to be able to help you somewhere else as well. And maybe if that's Anaya Smith, we just had our James Carver question. He's a big Anaya Smith guy who, in theory, could be the punt returner and help you at receiver as well. Cooper could be the punt returner, and obviously he's going to help you as a defensive back. But do you really want a young defensive back messing with being a punt returner on top of it when you're trying to teach him a bunch of different positions? I don't know if that's the way to go. And bottom line is, none of them are going to be as good as Britton Covey was last year. I don't know. I don't know why people are trying to run him. Well, I do know, because he doesn't look like a football player. But if you saw the attention to detail he puts into being a punt returner, I mean, he studies the opposition like he's a coach, and he's telling his blockers what to do, where to do, when to do it. He knows when punters, he knows when you're not going to be able to return it because the punters are too good. And more than the yardage he gets is the yardage he saves.
It's a good point. A lot of people don't think about that point.
He's just really good. And I know Nick knows it, because he would constantly talk about it last year, for people that don't realize that, this guy's a weapon. He called him. And he was just tremendous last year. To the point where maybe he can't live up to that this year. But if he doesn't, it's probably got to do with the blocking in front of him, because his attention to detail. I've seen his notebooks. He's got notebooks of, how do you even do that with punt returns? He's got notebooks of just information that give him a step ahead, and nothing against those other guys, but I'm sure they're not going to bring that same attention to detail. And I don't think anybody in the NFL does. So I'm not picking on any of the Eagles returners.
That's pretty impressive, though, that Britton Covey does that. I appreciate stuff like that, even if it's just for punt returning. I think that attention to detail is good, and I think, by the way, I think it tells a lot about a person. When you see somebody putting that much time and effort and care into what they do, even when it's a smaller level. Talking about the NFL, I think that's pretty dope. So cool to hear that about Britton Covey. John, one more thing I want to ask you, and then we'll recap a couple extra broader things. A lot of people just checking in. Wayne Miller says he just checked in. Wayne, thanks for being here, brother. So we'll make sure we do a full recap again at the end, just of John's key takeaways from the day. But John, right guard, that was one of the big things coming into camp, and I failed to ask you about it in hour one. I apologize. Does it look like it's Tyler Steen all the way? How did he look today? Any battle for him coming, or does he look comfortable? Do they look comfortable with him in that position?
Well, it's one day. They haven't even put on the pads yet. So, I mean, that's one of those positions, and Nick talked about that. There are certain positions where and Nick said it's still football. And we all know it, running back, offensive line, linebacker, defensive line, especially interior defensive line, where you got to wait till the pads come on. And, Tyler had to get stronger. Lane keeps saying he's gotten a lot stronger. So that's a positive. Sometimes guys need that year in an NFL weight program where their only job is to get bigger, stronger, and prepared. So that's all positive. But remember, Mekhi Becton was playing left guard today. So there's no, he was the starting left guard because Landon was out. So he would be the guy that pushing him most likely if he starts to falter. And that might be a situation. I bring up Isaac all the time, Isaac Seumalo, because it's such an interesting comparison. Isaac was a 3rd-round pick. Tyler was a 3rd-round pick. The Eagles wanted Isaac to be a starter in year 2. They want Tyler to be a starter in year 2. Left guard versus right guard. Isaac was a left guard at the time. And he started the 2017 Super Bowl season. He was the starting left guard, Isaac Seumalo, and he got benched because he didn't play well. And they went to Chance Warmack at times. They went to Stephen Wisniewski. And that's what will happen this time. I think they want Tyler Steen to win the job, and I would bet on him being the week 1 starter. But if he falters, they have the contingency set up, whether it's Mekhi Becton or Matt Hennessy or even Max Sharping. They have a bunch of contingencies set up if he does fail. But it's pretty clear they want him to be the starting right guard.
Yeah, so we'll see how that plays out. Good breakdown there, Johnny Mac. It'll be interesting to see. John, when do they put on the pads? Did they say that yet or no?
No, it's that. I can look it up in the break. They have it. The acclimation period is collectively bargained every year. I forget. They change it every year.
So it's not up to the Eagles. It's more in the CBA and
yeah. No, it's not at all up to the Eagles.
I didn't know that.
You have to wait a certain amount of days before you can put the pads on for the first time. And I'll when we go to break, I'll look it up. But they have the Guardian caps now. Yeah, everybody can wear them if they want. Obviously, if they don't want, they can also not wear them. And I believe you can wear them in games this year. So I'm going to be interested to see.
I know. I don't know if anybody's going to do that. Did you see the picture that came out of LA with the Chargers? Did you see that? They had
I did not.
a cover. So they had like a cover for the cap, and it like had the logo, and it like they tried to make it almost look like a helmet as best they could.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I guess.
I was wondering. Yeah,
they look goofy. Yeah, the NFL is not going to try out like goofy looking things on the field. So they did have a cover. I'll see if I can pull that picture up for you. But yeah, so we'll see what ends up happening with them.
Yeah. So, but yeah. Anyway, that's a CBA thing. And Nick even talked about Nakobe Dean was like, can we put the pads on? And no, you can't.
Yeah, was that more of a what's it called? Nick pandering to his player a little bit.
Maybe.
Here's a picture of the Guardian cap, just so you can see it. See how they have like a cover with the logo?
Oh yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I do too, because they look goofy without it. So at least if they go this route, at least they'll blend in, and maybe they can make it a little tighter, which they
I like that. Well, I'm not Jeff Kerr, but I like the Chargers uniforms as well in general. But
yeah, they're cool. They're cool unis for sure.
Joe Alt, he's going to be a big time player.
I agree. I think he's going to be great.
They look much better. The Eagles Guardian caps are just these bland,
goofy they're goofy looking things.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Remember when Kelsey put the bubble wrap on top of his Guardian cap?
Yeah. One more super chat, John, I want to go to here from James Carver. Drops another $10. Thank you, man. I appreciate you, James. You know that. Again, the support is very appreciated. He says, this is a good point. This is where I was going. When you ask why do people want Covey gone, I don't think it's that. I think it's more this. And James Carver points it out nicely here. He says, Britton's studying of kicks and kickers is crazy. But given the 37 100 percenters in your article, for anybody that doesn't know, that was John's 100% making the team in his article on SI.com. It makes it hard to keep if he can't play wide receiver. And isn't he as tall as Edelman? It's a good point. Like if he doesn't contribute anywhere else, that's where I would wonder if it's just a number crunch, and they can't get him on the roster. I think they're going to. But to answer James' question, Johnny Mac, go ahead.
Well, one of the things I criticized Howie for this year, this offseason, he hasn't got much criticism, but and really it shows up at wide receiver most because you don't have a lot of depth, and you're kind of pigeonholed into keeping certain guys, namely Britton because of the punt returns, and Anias and Johnny Wilson because they're day 3 picks, and GMs never want to cut their picks nowadays. They'll think about it in the 7th. They hate cutting picks now. It's absurd. They used to cut picks all the time. They never do it anymore.
Yeah, they don't anymore.
So, if you think about it, and then you have the top 3, that's it. That's your whole roster at wide receiver. Is you're pigeonholed yourself. Really, with the only maneuver ability being Paris Campbell versus John Ross or somebody from outside the organization at that 3rd receiver spot. If Howie says, I can get one of these guys through waivers, more would be Johnny Wilson, I would think, than Anias. Maybe a small chance, very small chance, he might risk him through waivers and do it that way. But yeah, I think he's pigeonholed himself to a bunch of receivers that can't help him at receiver, which I don't think is a great situation to be in. Now you hope AJ and Devontae stay healthy. They're both very durable, but you saw it when AJ got hurt late last season. That was a freaking disaster. People forget that, man. I mean, yeah, the team stunk down the stretch and they stunk with AJ, but it was a whole different ball game when he wasn't there. It was like super stink when he's not there. And you hope he stays healthy, but yeah, I don't like the backup receiver situation. But Paris played really well today. And if Paris plays like that, maybe that shifts things.
Yeah, so we'll see. Good breakdown there, though, of why it's a complex situation and how he pigeonholed himself. Gerald Ray asked what that article was, so I want to bring it up real quick and just show him where you can go and find it. This was John's 100%er Club, which is a great article. He gives you the 37 plays, 37 players who have nothing to worry about heading into training camp. Go to si.com/NFL/Eagles, and you will find all of John's work over there. He also had a great recap of the training camp today. So make sure you go and check out all of John's work over there at SI. And that was the article I was referring to, or James was referring to in the super chat. So good stuff there. Johnny Mac, I think we recapped the most of the things. I don't think we left anything out. If anybody in the chat wants to hear about something, feel free to put it, and I will ask John about it. We're going to get to another commercial break soon, coming up here in a minute, and then we'll do an overall recap to close out the last 30 minutes of the show. John, anything I missed? Anything on your mind that I didn't talk about with you coming out of day 1 of training camp here? I know there was a lot of people talking about different things on social media and stuff. Anything I missed that's top of mind for you?
I'm trying to think. We went over everything on the defensive side as far as the churn in the back 7. I think there's going to continue to be a lot of rotation in the coming days before they settle things down, probably in the second half of camp, to see, not only who's going to play, but what positions and what kind of value they're going to have in sub packages. I do think it was pretty clear today, again, from Howie Roseman, that don't close that book on Nakobe Dean, man. I'm at the point where I'm almost going to guarantee he's a starter next to Devin White if he's healthy, and that's obviously a big if, but yeah. And they already got him working. They started out in those run sort of support defense with Devin White and Zach Bond, but then they put Devin White and Nakobe together. And I think ultimately that's what it's going to be. Devin White and Nakobe, which, tallest short guy in the circus, I guess. But I think
what was the setup there? Who was the Mike? Who was the Will?
Looked like Devin was the Mike.
Interesting. I don't know if I think don't you. Don't you think
Well, it
Beckham
seems
would
to
be a
be
better will in that situation if it's those two? Don't you think that would be?
well.
I mean, I don't know. In my head, I look at Nakobe. I'm
I
like,
mean,
that's more of the
I'd
middle.
look at Nakobe as the better Mike as well, but
Yeah.
from the standpoint of what Bick is thinking, when they play dime and there's only one linebacker on the field, in theory, that's going to be Devin White. And, why change the green dot if you don't have to? Would be my theory. Now, how I would defeat that is just give it to Reed Blankenship. It's not like old school football where you need the middle linebacker because linebackers are so few on the field. They're so 3-down linebackers. And Reed wore it last year at times when they had so many issues in linebacker. I just give it to Reed, and then you have your problem solved because he's going to be out there every play if healthy, and he's smart enough to do it. And then you can toggle back and forth with Nakobe, Devin White, however you want. And also don't sleep on Ben Van Sumeren, who also got some reps. I saw him get one first-team rep at least and a bunch of second-team reps. So maybe they are going to give Ben Van Sumeren a shot. And I think, Howie mentioned that linebacker was an interesting position. I think he said exciting position. And I think part of the reason it's exciting is because what I've said on the show, they're all, if you want to go Devin White and Zach Bond, when you want to go all the way down to the third team with Jeremiah Trotter and whomever, whether it's Ben Van Sumeren or it's not that big of a difference.
Right. Good to know that Ben Van Sumeren got a little action out there, Johnny Mac. He was your one bold pick that might have an impact on the team just because of the
and Oren Burks I haven't mentioned. That's who I haven't. Oren Burks was practicing, but he wasn't in team drills and even in special teams where he's a very good special teams player, reputed. So he may have tweaked himself during the early part of practice, and maybe he'll show up tomorrow as being out. But it was weird because he wasn't out there at all. So that's part of the reason why Ben probably got kicked up a bit, because Oren Burks wasn't working in team drills.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. Last question on Nakobe Dean before we get to a break here, and then we'll just do one more 30-minute quick recap for anybody that just checked in late. Not everybody was here for the start of the show, so I just want to give them a chance to hear kind of an overall recap. We'll run through the offense, the defense, the press conferences, and then we will get out of here for the night. Johnny Mac, I know it's been a long day for you and another long one tomorrow, so good stuff by you. Nakobe Dean injury. All good? Is he back to 100%? Is the foot still bothering him? Where are we on the injury front with Nakobe Dean?
Well, he's completely cleared. Haven't talked to him yet, so he's not going to let on anyway. It was a long Lisfranc surgery's a difficult surgery, difficult injury. He was. I talked to him a bunch when he was going through it. He was on a rollabout for a while, then he kicked that for the crutches. Then he had a walking boot. So it's been a long time. He wasn't completely cleared at the beginning of OTAs, but he is completely cleared now, and ready to go. And hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah, good stuff there. So hopefully Nakobe can be fully healthy this year, and we'll get a good look at him and how he might look as a Mike line or whatever position they have him in as a linebacker. Though Howie Roseman threw a support again behind Nakobe today. Obviously, they're high on the guy. They still believe in the player. At least that's what the front that they're putting on. So hopefully Nakobe Dean can be something. I want to thank everybody for being here. A lot of great comments, a lot of funny comments. The chat is hilarious tonight. It's a little bit of a different vibe tonight, Johnny Mac, for the nighttime show on Birds 365. So good stuff. Thank you for all the work today. We're going to hit one more break here, and then we'll close out with another overall analysis of the day. So thank you all for being here. Make sure you guys hit a like on the show. Stay tuned. Birds 365 will be right back to close out this special Wednesday edition of Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your greenhouse? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a special Wednesday edition of Birds 365. A 6 to 8 show will be live again tomorrow nights from 6 to 8 p.m. Following practice number 2 of training camp. So good stuff. We will get all the recap from Johnny Mac. Same setup as it was today, basically. I'll be live in the morning. I'll preview the day for you guys. We'll run through some of the things from day one, obviously, which will be different from this morning. We didn't have day one to talk about. So we'll talk about that in the morning. And then Birds 365 from 6 to 8 p.m. Tomorrow night. Johnny Mac, let's get into just the overall recap again for anybody new. Offense, Johnny Mac. I know we talked about it, but let's run back through it for anybody that's new in the show tonight. Offense, what stood out? The good, the bad, the ugly. Hit me with it, Johnny Mac.
Making some plays, getting the ball to Dallas Goedert down the field, which is something they could have done in the spring, but passes were off target. So getting a big touchdown to Dallas, I think, excited people. Certainly the fans were hyped up to see Saquon Barkley. They got him more involved. He was basically more of a decoy than anything else in the spring. Got him the football a little bit more. And you saw at least some of his potential impact on an option play where Jalen Hurts kind of faked the pitch to him and the defense went toward Barkley, which gave Jalen a bunch of room. So that's sort of like what the Eagles are projecting. Maybe that happens, and maybe that's very helpful for the offense. So it was good to see him get involved. Rare. I hadn't mentioned that up because it's so rare. You never see it. You had a Devontae Smith drop, which is rare. I'm sure that's nothing to be concerned about. Paris Campbell was tremendous today. So that was
that's great. That's great news, John. I mean, just because we've been talking about how bad that wide receiver 3 position, I know it's just one day, but that's exciting that Paris Campbell had such a good day, and it seems that Jalen Hurts was going to him a lot.
Yeah, he was. And he was playing outside a lot too. So, some of that concern of having the backup for A.J. Brown and Devontae outside, maybe Paris can shoulder that load as well as being the main slot player. It's one day. I don't want to crown him, as Denny Green would say, but
yeah, got it.
It was a good first effort by Paris Campbell, and I think that was probably the most positive thing of the day, because people are expecting things from Dallas Goedert and Saquon Barkley and the big time playmakers, and so I thought Paris was the most positive development of the day from not only an offensive perspective, probably the whole team. From a defensive perspective, I'm all aboard the Quinyon Mitchell train. I mean, playing all 3 positions at corner, throwing everything at him, and he doesn't look overwhelmed at all.
Wait, John, before we go defense, can you just touch on Barkley real quick? I know everybody's been waiting on for the update on him. You said he looked pretty good. You're not going to see too much, obviously, but what did you see from Saquon, just to close out the offensive recap real quick?
Well, I mentioned the impact of, the fake option. It seemed like last year people were content to focus on Jalen Hurts when it came to the read option. And shutting him down. Not that the DeAndre Swift wasn't explosive, because you saw, week 2 when he won the job, it was like Brian Flores showed up and said, all right, I don't care about you. I'm going to try to stop Jalen Hurts. And he ran for whatever it was, 160, 70 yards, whatever it was. But teams weren't concerned, and now you have to be concerned about Saquon Barkley. Maybe that brings Jalen Hurts back into the mix as that dynamic runner. So it might not, I know everybody's obsessed with statistics, but if he can bring that kind of, we got to worry about Saquon Barkley more than we have to worry about Jalen Hurts, the Eagles might have something. And we have to see how that develops and how people are going to play them. But I think that could be, it's got nothing to do with numbers. That just has to do with having an impact on the game. And then he got a pass in the flat, and he showed some juice, and you could see his size and his speed and his strength. And the fans, I think he was hyped up because the fans were excited to see him. The fans that were there, I think he was hyped up by it.
Yeah, that's the sentiment in all of Philly. My girlfriend's family, she's a Penn Stater, but her whole, and they love talking to me about the Eagles when I'm with them, and they're like, "Oh, Saquon Barkley," and all, and so the fans are just jacked to the tilt.
They really are. Whenever I say anything remote, when I bring up some of the failings in New York, it's like, oof, it's like I criticized, I don't know, a deity or something of that nature.
Yeah, so we'll see. Look, I hope he has a big impact on the team. We will see how it all goes down. Johnny Mac, go ahead into the defense. You already started. You talked about how good Quinyon Mitchell was today, or at least that he played 3 different positions. He played left side, right side, and slot today. So good stuff from Quinyon Mitchell. But what else did you see from the defense on day 1 of training camp here?
Yeah, not as good. They didn't, they were so good in the spring. And I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the pajamas. Like I said, you didn't see as much. You saw a lot of shoehorning the football in the middle of the field in the spring that you didn't see today. So you and I have had that discussion a lot. Like, is that Kellen Moore just trying to get Jalen Hurts better at something he's not comfortable with, or is he trying to pound the square peg in a round hole? Well, now it's one day, but it seems like he's trying to get Jalen Hurts better at what he's not comfortable at. And, as you go on, you're going to see less of it. And I think that's what's going to happen. So that's a positive development, but it's not positive for the defense because they were making plays every time you would throw it over the middle of the field. Interceptions, and there were no splash plays from the defense today, and it seemed like there were 2 or 3 every spring practice. So wasn't as good. But obviously the offense has more talent than the defense.
Yeah.
From that perspective. So maybe the offense is starting to catch up and even things out.
Yeah, so good stuff from that perspective. Good question here I'm going to go to from Paul Mancini. He says, what kind of shape is Jordan Davis in? I know it's probably tough to tell without pads, but how did Jordan Davis look out there today?
Well, he lost, it's not even weight. He became leaner.
Probably turned to muscle though. He didn't like drop a bunch of weight, but he looks more muscular.
Well, he said he cut out the Arizonas, the teas that he likes so much. And, he weighs about the same, but he looks better and he looks leaner. But he's always not looked, I say this all the time. He never looked for a 350-pound guy. He never looked like he was grossly out of shape.
No, when I tell that story, I told it this morning, John, when I met him at the Maxwell Awards, and this is pre-draft, this was coming. Yeah. I mean, I know he needed to be in more shape last year, but this is not a guy you look at and you're like, oh, he's fat. Like he looks like an NFL athlete. He really does.
Yeah. And he always has, even, and now he's much leaner from what he was. But to me, with Jordan, it's about football conditioning. It's not about cosmetic conditioning. He looks better. Can he play 50 snaps? We're going to see week 1.
Right.
Nobody knows, but they're working on it. And Clint Hurt, the new defensive line coach, said that Big Fangio said it. He's going to play a lot. So, he's got to be ready. And nobody's going to know until he actually does it.
Yeah, so we'll see how it plays out for Jordan Davis. Good question there, Paul Mancini. Appreciate that. One more super chat here from James Carver. Once again, James, thank you, man. I can't thank you enough. He says, for both your work, one more super. As always, man. Thank you, James. He says, but short question. I saw he corrected. I don't know what Horret is, but he meant short. Short question. Barkley's presser, he said he had a huge front door run. Was that a one-off?
What do you mean? I don't know what he means by one-off.
I don't know if I don't really know either. I was hoping you knew.
It's kind of the pads aren't on. So I mean, number one, nobody's going full bore in the run game, but he did, show some juice that he didn't show in the spring. As I said, both in the passing game and in the running game. And you saw the most impressive part to me was, and I'm going to be right, it's going up at like 8:00 on SI.com, is that option play where the defense went with Barkley rather than staying with Hurts. And we don't know if that's what the Green Bay Packers are going to do, but if they do it, boy, I think that's going to open up things for the offense more than any kind of motion or any of that stuff. I think if teams are legitimately concerned that Saquon Barkley is 2018 Saquon Barkley, and they have to worry about him more than they have to worry about the quarterback, I think that's going to really open things up for the Eagles offense.
Yeah, so let's see how it all plays out.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but he looked a lot better today than he looked in the spring, which was not good in the spring. But I mean, most of the offense wasn't good. And to his defense, they were using him mostly as a decoy in the spring, both in the passing game, and they don't run the ball obviously in the spring at all. So that didn't factor into it. The one issue, Devin White had him in his hip pocket again. I don't know what that is. That could be a positive from the defensive side because he did it all spring. And this is a positive for Devin White. So these are the two players that Eagles fans criticize me the most for telling the truth about. But, you know, Devin White has had his number in pass coverage. I don't know if he's going full bore on these wheel routes or if it's more of a decoy thing. So it's tough to gauge. But either way, you can look at it positive from either direction, I guess. If you want to look at it from a positive Devin White situation, I mean, he Saquon Barkley can't get open on that dude. So I don't know if that's something to be concerned about with Barkley or something to be hyped about.
Yeah, right. Can go either way. It seems like, what's his name? No, Devin White is quite the athlete, though, which is pretty cool. Good question here from Stephen Kaufman. D-line projection behind Milton, Davis, and Carter. Go. That's a good one, Johnny Mac. I know those are the top three guys. Who is going to be the guys? Who seems to be?
Well, Nick brought up Marlon Tuipulotu and Moro Ajomo unprompted today. So those are the guys. And
Nick loves doing that, Johnny Mac. He loves bringing up certain players unprompted.
He does. And I wouldn't sleep on PJ Mustafer either. He's a big guy, big-bodied guy. And he's a legit, maybe potential backup for Jordan Davis that they don't really have on paper. From a size perspective. But yeah, it's going to be Marlon and Moro Ajomo as being the guys expected to be that. And the Eagles have liked Marlon for a while. There's been some injuries that set him back, and he's on a contract year, so it's a big year for him. And Moro, you know, more unproven, I would say. As a 7th round pick who barely played last year.
He was a Texas guy, right? Drafted out of Texas.
Yeah. Really smart guy too. Really well-spoken, really intelligent. So he's a high football IQ guy, but he's a little bit undersized. So, you know, if you're looking for a 3 technique backup or something like that, it's more Moro Ajomo. If you're looking for the run stuffer, it's more Marlon Tuipulotu. But those are the two guys that Nick brought up, and I think that's meaningful.
I agree with that for sure. One more super chat here from Madness. Madness, I thank you, man, very much. Very cool of you to do this. Just want to say thank you, Zander and Johnny Mac, for putting in the hard work all day. And JAKIB Eagles tailgate Zander, make it happen. Listen, if I can make it work with the pre and a post game show and make sure that we have all the content going that we need to so that I can make some damn money, I will do that for you guys for sure. I'd love to do a tailgate with all you guys. That would be a lot of fun. So thank you, Madness, for the $5 super chat, brother. That'll go into the beer fund for the tailgate if we need it. Thank you guys for the support tonight. A lot of good stuff, man. A lot of good stuff in our comments. So, John, pretty good recap today, man. I thought we had a good show tonight. We got about 10 minutes left to play, which we'll get into some stuff. But I thought overall, we recapped it pretty well. Offense, good things. I mean, I think it's good to hear that Jalen Hurts was clicking on all cylinders. Saquon looked a little bit explosive. So good stuff there. This is a good comment here. You made a comment about it earlier before Jeff Martin got here. Anything on Jalyx Hunt? You just want to inform Jeff, who's new to the show tonight, at least. Good stuff from Jalyx Hunt today, right, John?
Yeah, he second team again. And maybe I kind of mentioned, everybody's assuming he's a red shirt. Most likely he's going to be a virtual red shirt player, considered a developmental player. I brought up Jared Allen when I covered him back in the day. People thought that about him, and all of a sudden he's getting almost 10 sacks as a rookie, and he's on his way to the Hall of Fame. So you never know. If guys have it, they have it, and they can hit the ground running. And he certainly looks like an edge rusher. I'll say that. He's got the frame for it. He's got the athleticism, but he's raw. He had a late growth spurt. He started out as a safety at Cornell before he transferred, and he gained a bunch of weight, and he became an edge rusher. So he's got a lot to learn, but maybe he's just got it. Don't close the book on.
Yeah, Jeff says he's not new. Jeff, I didn't mean you were new. I just meant earlier John talked about it. And earlier on the show, Jeff, you weren't here when John talked about Jalyx Hunt. He compared him to the late.
Well, no. Well, I don't want to say that. No,
not compared, but you did use him in the same phrase, Johnny Mac.
Well, that's why I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't. I shouldn't ever.
I'm not saying he's going to be Jared Allen. That's not what John said. But it was a good. I urge you to go back and listen to it. John's breakdown was really good. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a Hall of Fame player. I'm just saying, as a rookie, nobody expected that. He was a 4th round pick. He was a lesser pick than Jalyx Hunt. And as a rookie, I saw him at a joint training camp practice, and he was just beating people like a drum. And all of a sudden, he's got 9 sacks as a rookie, and he's off, and he's a 5-time All-Pro, and et cetera. He's got 21 sacks in a season. I mean, one of the great pass rushers of all time. And he was just a natural at it.
Jeff says, I'll take Jared Allen. I'm in. Yeah. You and me both, Jeff. I'll take Jared Allen.
I'm not gonna. I don't think he's gonna be Jared Allen. There's like 15 people who ever lived like Jared Allen. But
no, but you're. I mean, from the perspective of that, he's a project player. He showed good signs today. Fair to say, right?
Yes. And maybe when he's got to go against Mekhi Becton down the road, maybe that shuts him down. Certainly Lane and Jordan would be more difficult. So, a lot of tests to come, but you can't just assume somebody's going to be a redshirt player. And I'm sure the Eagles hope that's the case, but they hope it's the case for the belief that Nolan Smith is going to take a big step forward in year 2. And didn't notice Nolan a lot today, other than our buddy John Clark, who you mentioned earlier in the show, was standing next to me and saying, "Hey, Nolan gained some weight," which he did.
That's what I was going to ask you. Does he look more NFL ready coming into the year?
Yeah, he's bigger. He mentioned that in the spring. He's 245. He played last year at 237. Bigger, stronger. But yeah, my major concern with him is the shoulder, and is it going to hold up? But
I'm concerned on Nolan Smith. I don't know. I don't have any reason to be other than a gut inclination and a gut feeling, but just doesn't. I don't know. I just when you think about the dominant pass rushers, I just don't see it. So hopefully he can find his role and get into his rhythm. But
people were probably saying that about Hassan Reddick early in his career.
Yeah, and go back to Philly, Brandon Graham. I mean, but it's a different time.
People wanted to run Brandon out on a rail. Yeah. I mean, don't sleep on guys. I mean, sometimes it takes time to develop, and Nolan's still got the same talent. I mean, he's got we talk about athletes. I mean, people constantly talk about Saquon Barkley and his athleticism as the 2018 second round pick, and Devin White as the 5th overall pick, and they talk about their athleticism 5-6 years into their career,
Right.
which I get. This guy's 2 years into his career. He ran a 4. I got to look it up. It was absurd. Nolan Smith, from a athletic testing standpoint, how gifted he is. So I kind of
how about the fundamentals though of pass rushing? Did he? I guess you don't see much of that yet.
no, not
Pass
yet.
rush moves and anything
You
like
gotta,
that.
well, first of all, when Lane Johnson has the pads on, that's when you decide. I mean, and it becomes a big issue.
Nolan Smith is being.
He ran a 4.39 at 238 pounds.
That's pretty insane. Quinyon Mitchell ran a 4.33. I think that's insane.
His vertical leap was 45.5 at 238 pounds. His broad jump was almost 11 feet at 238 pounds. I mean, think about that when you're talking about Barkley and White and how athletic they are. This guy's every bit as athletic for the position he plays, and maybe more, and people are giving up on him.
Well, no, I'm not giving up on him. I shouldn't have said that.
Well, I'm not picking on you specifically. A bunch of people are giving up on him.
Well, yeah, it's definitely too early. Don't give up on him, anybody. That's too early to give up on him. But I think, when you're drafted in the first round, John, that's how it goes. People want to see it, and they didn't see it from him. And I think it's fair to at least want to see more. And I think that's where people jump to he couldn't barely get on the field as a first round pick, the shoulder, the size. I don't know. I think people just, maybe you're right. They jump to conclusions too quick, but at the end of the day, I think that's where it comes from. I don't want to give up on him though. I think you're right. I mean, that's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive numbers there as an athlete, but we'll see how he pans out as an edge rusher. Leon Banks gives us $2. Can we get Sills a pass to Novacare? Leon, that'll never happen. They will never give Sills a pass to Novacare. So let's just shut that down.
Trust me, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
By the way, when I bring up Nolan Smith, his relative athletic score from Keith Platt, 126 out of 1,629 edge rushers, defensive ends from 87 to 2023. And all of that, and the only reason he's 126 is because he's undersized. It's height and weight. Obviously, he's undersized. Everything else, elite.
Yeah.
Vertical, broad jump, 40-yard dash, 20-yard split, 10-yard
size
split.
is big at that position, no, John? I mean, that's important.
Well, it is, but the ironic thing is, Nolan at Georgia, and James Carver could probably talk about this as our resident SEC expert.
Yeah.
He was a phenomenal run defender. So he's very strong for his size, but his athleticism is just, he's a better athlete as an edge rusher than Saquon is a running back or Devin White is a linebacker. Now, the size is not what Saquon Barkley is as a running back or Devin White is as a linebacker, which is why he gets pushed down a little bit, because he doesn't have the size, those metrics, which were graded as very poor, 6'2", 238. He would have been top 10 from just a pure athleticism standpoint. Over 1,600 guys over the past 35 years. That's how athletic he is.
That's pretty incredible. So hopefully he can pan out and be a good edge rusher. John, great show tonight, man. I had a lot of fun doing the night show here after day one of training camp. I know it's been a long day for you, so I thank you for your work, for your great breakdowns. Make sure everybody goes and reads John's work on his Twitter at JF McMullen and on SI.com. Great stuff. Thanks, everybody.
By the way, real quick, and I'm not making this up, it's at MathBomb on Twitter. You could follow Kent. It's Kent Lee Platt. Does a tremendous job. I did not see this until right now. I was reading under Nolan Smith, his chart. For comparison, that's significantly better than Saquon Barkley, his athleticism profile. from Kent Lee Platt. Nolan
Did you retweet that, Johnny Mac? I got to check that out.
I'll retweet it now. And look at the comments underneath, and you'll see Kent say that. That's not me. That's Kent talking.
Got it.
But he's seeing outrageous athleticism.
Good stuff tonight, Johnny Mac. Thanks, everybody in the chat. Really good stuff. 112 likes. Is that right on the show tonight? That's tremendous, everybody. Thank you guys so much for the likes, for the comments, for the support. It was a nighttime edition, our first one ever in Birds 365. We'll have another one tomorrow night. Make sure you guys also check out in the morning, though. I'll be live at 8 a.m. With just me. It'll be a solo show. Maybe I can get John by phone tomorrow morning, depending on what his schedule looks like. We'll coordinate that one. But make sure you guys check in the morning. We'll have content all day long again tomorrow, and really all leading up to the season now. So thank you guys all for being here. Smash that like button on your way out. Johnny Mac, great work today, brother. Get some sleep. Have a good show or a good day tomorrow, and we'll talk to you tomorrow night on Birds 365. All right, man?
All right, sounds good. Thanks everybody for adjusting. Yeah, hopefully I can get some rest, and I'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah, wind down now and get some rest, Johnny Mac. We appreciate it. The fans appreciate it. I appreciate it. So thank you guys all. We will see you tomorrow on JAKIB Sports and tomorrow night on Birds 365. See you next time, everybody.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.